Kia ora, and welcome to this video, which is part of a series of videos for students undertaking a research degree, particularly a master's or a doctoral thesis degree. This video is going to talk about a common experience of doing a research thesis, which is that the process can feel very lonely. And what I want to do in this video is unpack why that happens, some of the things that you can do to address it, but also some reasons that parts of it can't be addressed, but maybe understanding them a little bit better can help you as you go through the process. So, to start off with, when we decide to do a research degree, we've often got certain ideas about what's going to happen. Many of us have enjoyed prior forms of study, or maybe we haven't enjoyed the prior forms of study, but we're just really stubborn and we're determined to keep going. But there's often an idea that there will be a special sort of social environment around a research degree. Maybe we imagine that we're going to have long, really intense conversations with our supervisors, or we're going to be grouped together with a brilliant set of people and have all of these really stimulating conversations and, continue our intellectual growth, but in a really deep way compared to other degrees. Now, to some degree, that's all going to happen, but research degrees have certain points of difference with prior study, and one of the things that those differences mean is that often the process feels a little less like what we imagine at the outset, and a little more like some of the things in these pictures. A research degree can really make you feel dislocated from the time and the space of other people's lives. Days can be very, very long, or they can be very, very short. You can be very isolated from other people in a way that creates a disconnect. You can spend a lot of time in your own head with your own thoughts, contemplating the matters of your thesis. Your closest relationships may be with books or journals. They can be a very, very isolating experience. And there are two reasons that this is so common. One has to do with the way that we study when we do a research degree, but the other one has to do with the purpose of the study, what kind of development we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to produce when we do a research degree. So let's talk about both of those. So before we do a research degree, we're usually doing study in groups. We're usually in classroom settings or with other people. We have conversations or we share a joint experience. We've got the same learning environment with many other students. That's not so much the case with a research degree. So even though there will be lots of other people usually doing research degrees with you, they're working on their own projects, they have their own supervisors. There's not as much that you share in common with very many people. So in your prior forms of study, that common environment gives you something automatically in common with a lot of other people. And it gives you lots of chances to meet other people. And you don't have to think, what am I going to say to this person to get to know them? Because you can all just complain about the terrible lecture you've just had, or how hard the homework assignment is, or how interesting a particular class is and how much you love it. There's automatically some way to connect. And those connections can span other kinds of differences and help you get a friendship circle together. It's not so easy in a research degree to find those groups of people. So supervisors are often working with you one-on-one. It's not the case in all fields, and there are forms of group supervision, but more than prior study, you're working with supervisors in a very unique kind of way. Even if you've got some kind of group supervision, or you're working in a lab with other people or the rest, much of your time is spent working independently. Even within a broad research team where you may share an overarching project, your thesis project is unique to you. There's something specifically you need to achieve that nobody else you're working with is being asked to do. So they're sort of intrinsically different, and they intrinsically diversify people, because you've all got to generate something original, and you can only do that if what you're doing is different from what everybody else is doing. And so one of the consequences of this form of delivery of research degrees is that automatic social connections are harder. You're not as likely to share things with lots and lots and lots of other people, so that somebody in a big group is likely to be someone that you can make a connection with. You generally have to create opportunities for connection, and you need to do that actively and deliberately. And these opportunities might be online connections, whether with people that you've already known or with a new international community of people interested in the kind of work you are doing, or in your hobbies and the rest away from research. Or you may need to take advantage of professional associations, conferences, opportunities to network, clubs at your university. You may need to get yourself out and about more, because the social connections are not going to form automatically just by being in a classroom. That's more difficult for the many of us who are introverts doing research degrees than for the extroverts, but it's an extra thing where you really just can't automate social connections in the context of a research degree. But if it were just about the fact that you're no longer in big classes, then you could sort of solve it by going out and putting yourself out and meeting other people and the rest. But there's another layer to why research degrees are experienced as lonely, and that is that they have a fundamentally different goal from prior forms of study. So before you do your research degree, usually you've done prior study that involves developing mastery of something that somebody already knows. Maybe it's the professor standing in front of your class who already knows it. Maybe it's in a book somewhere. But essentially what you are doing in most forms of prior study is you are mastering existing knowledge, and you are studying under experts who are transmitting their expertise to you and giving you a chance to internalize that expertise yourself. And again, those experts may be face-to-face in front of you, or they may be in a literature, but somebody out there already knows it, and you are mastering what we already know. Research degrees have a different goal. Their goal is to discover new knowledge. This is strongly the case for a PhD. For a master's thesis, it may be a little bit mitigated. You may be able to do something that's not quite as strikingly original. But in general, the point of a research degree is to discover or to create, if you're in a creative practice field, something that no one, not even your supervisors who are most closely involved in helping you form your research, currently knows. You're generating something properly new. And this changes the nature of how you can connect with other people around the knowledge that you're learning. The goal of a research degree is sort of intrinsically isolating. Your job is to move to the very edge of human knowledge, to move to the edge of human creation, if your thesis is something where you're creating something new. And then you have to step past that barrier and into the unknown. That is the nature of the thesis, that you step into a space or you create a space that has not previously existed or has not previously been analyzed or uncovered. And the requirement for originality in that sense is intrinsically isolating. The point of the degree is to go to some place where no person has gone before. Your supervisors can help you with this because hopefully they've been through the process themselves. They should be familiar with the experience of stepping past what other people have known, and they should be experts enough that they can take you pretty close to the border of what we know now, so they can kind of guide you to the boundary, and they can share their experiences of passing across the edge. But basically, once you get to the edge, it's your job. You're the one who has to make that step. You have to map the final bits of that process, and you have to do it on your own. And then you have to make a reverse journey and kind of turn around and bring everyone with you. But that particular point where you're at the edge and you're stepping across it, you should at that point know more about whatever it is that you're studying than your supervisors do. That's the goal, particularly at the PhD level of a research degree. And this process is intrinsic, so there's no way to get rid of it. You know, you can do things to overcome the fact that you're not taught in a classroom. You can go out and you can put together groups of people and you can overcome that kind of loneliness. But the fundamental kind of intellectual isolation that is at the core of a research degree is intrinsic to the process. And research training, in part, is about learning how to manage that kind of journey into the unknown. Now, once you've done it, you don't stay there. You don't stay there out past the boundaries where you don't connect with anyone. So part of the other part of research training, and I say this to you because if you're in that moment where you're feeling very lonely, you do turn the corner and come back into human company. Part of research training is about finding your way back and sharing what you've learned with others. Okay, so research doesn't just create new knowledge. When you're finished with the process, it creates new possibilities for community. As you come back, you explain what you've learned, and then other people get to share in that process. And so once you've finished with the process, there are new questions that your work will have raised. Those answers will still be out of reach. They will attract other researchers, and possibly you, to go back to the boundary, into the unknown again, and then keep returning, keeping to create new community, and then going to the boundary back and forth and back and forth. So hopefully understanding a little bit about the process will help make it a little bit less distressing. People don't stay there in that feeling of loneliness in the research degree, but it is part of what you're learning, is what does it mean to actually step beyond what we know now, and then come back with what you've learned so that you're bringing other people along with you and actually expanding that boundary.